Dr. Dolly, thanks for taking my question and everything you do. This is Phil from Ohio. I actually recently received a hardcover copy of Beating the New Death Tax by James Lange from listening to your podcast a month or two ago. I also re-listened to that episode several times. He seems to be a big proponent of Roth IRA conversions. I understand that the best time to do Roth conversions are during low-income years, like before your attending years or after you retire, but before you collect on Social Security and required minimum distributions kick in. Having said that, could you see yourself doing Roth conversions during your peak income years? Here's my situation. I'm in my mid to late 30s, emergency physician, and I max out pre-tax contributions as well as a backdoor Roth. Each month, I set aside a monthly amount to invest in a taxable brokerage account. I also have a 401k from a previous employer. Instead of investing in a brokerage account, would it make sense instead to use that money to convert some of my 401k into my Roth IRA account and pay those taxes? Perhaps enough to get me to the next tax bracket? Does that make sense, or am I complicating things too much? And should I just continue my current plan? Thanks again for everything, and I really appreciate your advice.
Okay, great question. The answer is long and complicated. The truth is, however, by the time you get to this stage in life, in your financial life, when you are asking this question, you've already won the game. You now know enough, by virtue of having asked this question, you now know enough that you know everything you need to know to become ridiculously wealthy when combined with your physician income. And so congratulations on that. It really doesn't matter in the long run which of these you do. Both are perfectly fine. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. As a general rule, you don't want to do Roth conversions during your peak earnings years, though. That can change if you are a super saver. If you're the kind of person that's going to have $5 or $10 million in an IRA and have big, huge RMDs, and you got all these other sources of income and retirement, from all these rental properties you own or whatever, then it can make sense to do Roth conversions and Roth contributions even during your peak earnings years. But for the typical physician that's going to retire with $2 to $5 million, that really doesn't make sense. You want to take advantage of those tax-deferred contributions during your peak earnings years, and you don't want to do Roth conversions then. However, naturally, everything gets more complicated, right? There's now a tax bill in Congress that is not only talking about raising tax rates, which makes you go, well, maybe I should do the Roth conversion now, but it is also talking about outlawing Roth conversions for people who make over a certain amount of money, right? This is the way the rules were prior to 2010. And so you're going to be faced, if this bill passes, with this decision, do I convert before the end of the year or not? And that's a difficult decision to make. But there is also some additional things in this bill. For example, for super savers, they're going to put a 50% required minimum distribution on any IRAs or 401ks total sum that's over $10 million. You basically have to take 50% of the amount over $10 million out every year. And if you are so fortunate as to get more than $20 million in there, and again, I don't see any talk about indexing these amounts to inflation, but if you're lucky enough to get $20 million in there, you're going to be required to take out everything above $20 million or the entire Roth account, whichever one's less. So I don't want you to have, $25 million Roth IRAs anymore, apparently. So keep that in mind, that these bills are all in Congress and they may change the rules, and that the answer to your question depends on how these rules are changed and if they're changed and what your future looks like. So the only general rule of thumb I can give you is don't do Roth conversions and make tax-deferred contributions during your peak earnings years, and do Roth conversions and Roth contributions in other years. Okay, that's the only general rule I can really give you. The rest of those require you to run the numbers on your own personal situation and decide whether it's worth prepaying your taxes. Of course, there's also the other risk, right? That Congress somewhere down the road decides, well, just because you paid taxes on this money before doesn't mean we can't make you pay taxes on it again, right? In the form of, who knows, a wealth tax or a second income tax on Roth accounts, who knows? So a lot of people that are not very trusting of the government want their tax break now, and so they favor a tax-deferred contribution. Likewise, money inside retirement accounts gets more asset protection than money outside retirement accounts. So that would argue for you doing Roth conversions, which you are in essence moving money from a taxable account into your Roth account. Now, as you can see, this is a really complicated question, a really complicated issue. And if it's not super clear what to do, it's probably because it doesn't matter very much in your situation. But if you really want to sort it out, you're going to have to make some assumptions, some of which might turn out to be wrong, and run the numbers yourself. But I've got blog posts on the White Coat Investor blog, Roth versus traditional 401k contributions. You can read up on all these factors there and try to make a decision that is right for you in your situation. But you're thinking about the right things. I just wish there was an easy, quick answer I could give you that is definitely do the Roth conversion. Or definitely don't do the Roth conversion, but it's just not that simple. It's not that easy. And so I'm going to tell you the truth and tell you it depends. If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dahl, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.